is called follow through and overlap. And the idea in this principle of animation is that everything moves at its own pace. And when elements of these things that are weighted and move differently to each other are connected, they are going to stop and start and move at different times from one another. So for example, in our monkey here, we have the head and the torso, which could be considered the main core part of the monkey. Secondary to that, we have the limbs. So these are going to move slightly at a different rate because, first of all, they have their own musculature and they're going to sort of dictate their own motion a little bit and be a bit more independent. But because they are appendages to our core monkey elements, the head and the torso, they're also going to sort of follow through behind in that motion. But to a greater extent, we have something like the tail and the hair. And these are very much appendages to the monkey in the sense that they sort of hang from it at a bit of a distance from the monkey, and they also are weighted differently to something quite heavy and meaty like the head, torso, or limbs. So as such, in our example provided in this image here, we have a monkey whose main solid mass is moving down towards the ground and then collides with the ground and then bounces away. And in this situation, as the body is moving backwards, the hair and the tail are also moving in the direction of the arc of motion. And at the time the monkey hits the ground, these things follow through and move down towards the area of the collision, but at a slightly delayed rate, which I'll show you in context in a moment. And then finally, when the monkey bounces away in the other direction, there's that continued follow through and overlap as the monkey continues along a different trajectory. So applied in the context of our animation here, you can see that as the monkey is thrown towards the ground, the hair and the tail are stretched in the same way the rest of the body are. But by the time he hits the ground, they're taking on a motion of their own and then flipping in the other direction. So there's a slight delay from when the body decides to change direction to when the tail and the hair do. A fairly apparent example of follow through and overlap being applied can be seen when the monkey shakes his head. As his head turns, his hair is sort of catching up with him. So to begin with, as the monkey turns his head aggressively this way, his hair is sort of lagging behind where it originally was, even though the center line of his head has moved quite a distance. And there's quite a discrepancy there between the base of the monkey's hair and the end of the monkey's hair. So we're getting this overlapping action because the hair then continues to lag behind, even though when we have here the hair moving forwards in this direction, the monkey has already stopped in this end position, is going to in the next frame be moving backwards. So in the next frame then, when the head continues to move in the reverse direction, the hair is continuing along this original trajectory until finally it's pulled in the other direction by the monkey's head turning once again. This can also be seen applied to the monkey's angry walk cycle, especially as the head moves up and down. As the monkey's head is moving up in the animation, the hair is lagging behind, and as the monkey's head is moving down, the hair is sort of maintaining a greater distance from the head because it as an appendage is lighter and isn't going to have the same downwards force that the hair is having. Follow through and overlap is also happening with the monkey's tail. So the base of the tail is always keeping up with where the monkey's torso is. And as the animation moves along, the early part of the tail has always caught up to the motion. But the later part of the tail, the further along it gets, has the motion applied later and later. So this upwards motion of the body here is immediate and apparent in this end of the tail connected to the torso, but it's much later that the upwards motion is actually applied to the end of the tail, which is how we get that snake-like sort of curve. Because as you can see, by the time the monkey's tail is going up, the monkey's body is going down. And that's how we get the overlap in the animation. Another way you could describe this principle is by calling it drag, which is where there are other elements of the character or object you're animating that drag behind in a motion of their own, independent of the main core. Thanks for watching through this tutorial, and I'll see you in the next tutorial.